here today to have our pre-observation meeting conversation. And so Anna, you teach, well, you have several different preps, but you teach world history, 10th grade, and that's the class I'm going to be observing, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and so can you tell me what your area of focus is going to be for this lesson?
We could focus on standard number 1, engaging and supporting all students in learning.
Okay. Okay. So this is going to be how we develop the focus for your lesson, and after we do the observation, then we'll go back and reflect on how it all went. So I'm going to be talking to you today about learning outcomes, possible challenges, things I've got kind of wondered about, and evidence of growth, and what kind of feedback you'd like to see, and then next steps. We'll talk about all of these things in our pre and kind of lay things out how the lesson's going to go.
All right.
So for learning outcomes, the first question that I have for you is, how does this lesson help students to meet this standard?
So this is a lesson about the ideology of National Socialism, and you will be observing the second half of the lesson. In the first half of the lesson, the students read sort of like a summary of that ideology, and then they had to answer a whole bunch of questions, and we were in the process of discussing their answers. That's when you're coming in to observe.
Okay.
So my expectation will be that they participate and present their answers and their understandings, and then I'll move to correct those understandings if needed.
Okay.
And I expect them to end the lesson with some sense of what following that ideology would be in a practical sense.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say then is that your expectation and goals for the lesson is that you expect them to participate and leave the lesson with an understanding of the ideology
of the practical impact of that ideology.
Okay. The practical impact. Okay, awesome. So there's an area for like possible challenges. So in this area, it makes me question, like, we talk a lot about equity at our school. How, if any, or ways are you making scaffolding or changing procedures for our underserved students, but not just them, to make sure that all students are learning?
All right. Let's see. As part of the lesson, they have to front load, or we front load some vocabulary that should help. Different students that have issues with English or whatever. Then they're also seated in pairs, and with some students that I believe need some extra help, I've tried to pair them so that the person they're sitting next to may positively contribute to their peers' understanding, so that they can help one another and listen to one another.
So that sounds like a great idea. It sounds like you took some time and went behind how they're seated in the classroom, and not necessarily high-low, but students that need help, you thought about who could help them.
So in some instances, it's good to sit one student that is sort of like an overachiever with one that is struggling, but you also need to look at the personalities of the students, because if the overachiever is not the generous type, then that backfires. But if the person is willing, then it works well. And you don't have to mention it to them.
Correct. That's good. That sounds like a really good idea. Okay, so in this lesson, how will you check for understanding? Like, what will that look like?
All right, so it's a reading with questions. So there are several levels of checking for understanding. First, I let them by themselves come up with answers. Then, and that's the part you're going to observe, I ask for their answers out loud, and we discuss their answers, and I give them feedback on their answers, and I expect that they adjust their answers to the discussions we're having in class. One of the challenges is that they actually participate enough. And then they will submit those answers to me, and I will grade them and give them back. And there's usually some sort of quiz question at the end of the chapter that will relate to this specific reading. That's another way of checking. So there are several ways of checking.
Okay. So the actual evidence would be like
the most direct evidence is the written answers in a Google Doc that they submit after the lesson is over.
Okay.
And
So-
also the discussions in class, but that is less tangible, I suppose.
So when we meet for the post visit, would it be possible to maybe bring samples if you don't want to print them out, like maybe share a few of
I can share those files with you. Yeah.
Okay. And maybe you could show me, like, you know, if we're doing a 4, 3, 2, 1, like on the SBAC, like, you know, what's
This is
a
a number
4,
four answer. Yeah,
in a
I
1
can
or
do
2.
that.
Okay, awesome. That's going to be interesting. So when we talked about our learning outcomes, our possible challenges, things that we're wondering about, and I was really wondering about the student work. So that'll be nice to be able to see the work, and being able to see that, I think, will show the evidence of growth or how they're learning. What specific things would you like for me to look for in class?
Well, the group that you're going to observe is an extremely quiet group.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna try a few things to see if they participate more, but maybe afterwards, after you've seen them interact with me and with one another, if you have further suggestions as to how to make them participate a little more, that would be nice.
Yeah, you haven't offered to pay them?
No, I haven't. Maybe I should.
Okay. That's good. That tells me what I need to look for. So, you know, as far as next steps for the kids, I guess what will be the assessment? You mentioned something about a quiz question.
Yeah, so the reading or the answers, their answers to the questions from the reading, that's one level of assessment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the discussion in class is another level of assessment, more fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because I expect that after we discuss, they adjust their answers.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have another opportunity to check further understanding. And then there will be a question in the quiz when we end this chapter that relates to that ideology. So that's another extra level of assessment.
Okay. What are some resources that might support you in this, if any? I don't know.
Resources that may support me. I think the fact that we now have Chromebooks in class helps because I can quickly ask the students to check, for example, on the meaning of a word, because yes, you may think, okay, these are the words I would like them to find the meaning of before they start tackling the answers, but I tend to have a much broader vocabulary than the students, and I may miss some, and so in the discussions it may come up that they have questions on vocabulary, so it's good that we have the Chromebooks they can check. There are also facts that I can ask them to check instead of giving them the answer, and those are resources that help. Having the answers at your fingertips or the ability to look for them helps.
Okay. Is there anything that you need from me to help get your lesson set up or help make everything more smoothly for you?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. And then last question. So after this lesson, what are the next steps that you feel like you'll be, I mean, just broadly, you know, for them to master this standard? Do you have
For me to master that standard?
with the kids? Yeah.
So like all knowledge is cumulative.
Yeah.
And we do a whole bunch of different activities. So I lecture some, they read on their own, we read in class. I have some videos for them, short videos that sort of rehash the things that we've discussed, that they've read or that I've presented. I have more readings with, instead of like short answer type, with multiple choice type for some factoids that I think are important for them to remember. And so all of those things circle on one another.
Okay.
And help to reinforce some of the things that they are learning.
Okay. All right. Well, do you have any questions for me?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, then I look forward to observing your class next week.
All right.